So now let's give the dragon something to eat. And the way we're going to do it, I find the most fascinating thing about Phaser, because it gives us a way to be very creative in a very short amount of code. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to be bringing these pieces of candy into the game, and we're going to create a lot of instances of the candy, a lot of copies. And first we simply load the sprite sheet in as we've done before, game load sprite sheet, and we'll call it candy. And then we give it the path, images main candy, and they're 52 wide by 50 pixels high, and there are 8 pieces of candy. Now we're going to go down in our create function, and we're going to create a group. And so far we've used groups to just simply, well, group things together. We put different things in there and we are able to move them around like we did in Colors app. But here is a function of a group that we have not used, and it's this candies, the group, create multiple. So you can create multiple objects of something. So create multiple, and you tell it how many, and I'm going to put 40. And then you tell it what you want to copy, in this case the candy. And then we can set all properties of all 40 candies at once by saying this candies, set all, and the first one we're going to do is check world bounds. And that will tell it that the candies have to pay attention to the size of the game. They can't go off the game without triggering an event. And with that event, if you set out of bounds kill, then Phaser will remove the piece of candy from the screen if it leaves the screen. So we don't have to manually remove it if the X or Y goes out of a certain bounds. Phaser will do that automatically. And that's 4 lines of code, and I've just made 40 pieces of candy. I think that's pretty cool. Now I'm moving this line down because we have to enable the candy in the physics as well, and we didn't create the candy until that line, so I brought that code down. I'm going to replace this dragon with this dragon candies in an array, and so now it will set physics to all 40 pieces of candy and the dragon all at the same time. So now we need to put an instance of the candy on stage. And I'd like to use a timer to do that. And Phaser has an excellent built-in timer. And I've got it in the snippets here, and it's under miscellaneous snippets. And there it is up at the top, Phaser timer. So we take that, copy and paste it over there, right at the end of the create function. Rather, set listeners. Now there's a constant Phaser timer second, and so that's equal to 1 second, and you can multiply it by 2 or 1.5 or whatever you want, and that'll be the number of seconds. The next parameter is the function that we're going to call, and we're going to call it this fire candy. We have to put the scope in of this, otherwise we can get trouble later. So fire candy function, and what we need to do is get the first available piece of candy in the group. So we'll just call it candy and equals this candies, which is the group, get first dead. You can tell this language was written by game developers. So this candies get first dead will get the first available piece of candy that is not on the screen or not active. And we're going to make a Y position for it. We'll store that in YY, and we'll use those random numbers as we did before. Game random integer in range. I always copy and paste that one. It's a long one to remember. And let's see, so it can be all the way up at the top at 0, and we'll say the game height, and we'll minus 60 because we've got that piece of ground in there. So we can change that later if we need to. And the x will always keep the same. It'll be the width of the game minus about 100. And the reason I don't put it off the screen is because of that kill candy function that's built in, the kill out of bounds. It would just disappear. And the type, the frame, we have 8 of them, so it's between frames 0 and 7. And now we simply apply those values to the candy. Candy frame equals type. Candy reset. That will reset all the properties, and it will set it to the position X and Y. If we set enabled, then that means it is no longer eligible for the candies get first dead. We set the velocity on the body, since we've enabled that up in the array earlier, and we'll set it for -200. All right, let's have a look. And there comes our piece of candy. Now, but we only have one, and that's because if you want to do a one-shot timer, you use timer events add. If you want to do it over and over again, use game time events loop, and then that will just keep firing. So let's have a look. There we go. All that candy, and we only did what, about 10, 12 lines of code? Pretty cool.